investigator, speaker, and author Kathleen Martin joins us. You're going to want to be here for that, I can assure you. All right, let's bring on Mr. Jordan Maxwell. Now, Jordan Maxwell continues as a preeminent researcher and independent scholar in the field of occult and religious philosophy. His interest in these subjects began as far back as 1959. He served for 3.5 years as the religion editor of True Seeker magazine, America's oldest free thought journal since 1873. Now, his work exploring the hidden foundations of Western religions and secret societies created enthusiastic responses from audiences around the world. He has conducted dozens of intensive seminars, hosted his own radio talk show, guested on more than 600 radio shows, and written, produced, and appeared in numerous television shows and documentaries, including 3 2-hour specials for the CBS TV network, as well as the internationally acclaimed 5-part Ancient Mystery series, all devoted to understanding ancient religions and their pervasive influence on world affairs today. His work on the subject of secret societies, both ancient and modern, and their symbols has fascinated audiences around the world for decades. Now, considering the rapidly moving events today and the very real part hidden religion or religious agendas play in our modern world today, he feels that these controversial subjects are not only interesting to explore, but too important to ignore. His extraordinary presentations include documents and photographs seldom seen elsewhere. Now, his interests and areas of study include astrotheology, sexual symbolism in world religions, foundation of modern religion, secret societies, world mysteries, ancient symbols and occult emblems, ancient sciences and technology, hidden Bible teachings and mysteries, and more. Mr. Maxwell, thank you for coming on Lighting the Void. I appreciate your time, and it's really awesome to have you here.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm always happy to be with people who are interested in learning, because this is what's been driving me all of my life. I started back in 1959, some 58 years ago, when I was 19 years old. And I really, really was interested to know as much as I could about everything. I was always fascinated by secrets and knowledge which most people don't even know exist. And so I just dedicated my life to looking at the dark side, all the secret stuff going on in the world that people don't know. And the more you look, the more you find. Until finally, at 77 years old, I am now convinced that there is no bottom to how dark the world can be. And there's just an extraordinary amount of information and knowledge that's been kept from the people for, I suppose, thousands of years. And today, with all the modern day opportunities to learn, with radio, great radio shows, and television documentaries, and the web, and the mere fact we have libraries, great libraries. People today are more ill-informed with all of this extraordinary knowledge that's available to the world of mankind. People are more misinformed and disinformed than ever before. So it doesn't have to do with a person's intelligence. It has to do with their willingness to take the time to ask questions and look for answers. Most people don't feel they have time to waste looking at dark subjects and all the mysterious things which are going on in the world today. So they don't know. They have no idea what's happening. And it's because of their own laziness or lazy mental habits, or they're too busy trying to raise a family and stay afloat, so that they just don't have time to spend researching all the darkness of this world. But I decided I wanted to do that with my life. So my entire life for the past 58 years, starting back in 1959, has been one continual trail of going into dark corners of the world and finding the dark secrets that run our planet, all the different dark stuff that goes on that we are not usually aware of, which includes our religious beliefs and where they really came from and what they really are, and our governmental systems, how the world is governed, and our commercial systems and our educational and law and law enforcement systems. It's just an extraordinary world we live in. And so that's what I do. That's what I'm interested in. And so I don't know where we could go from here. It's up to you where you would like to go, but I'm fascinated with the whole world.
Well, I got to say, first off and foremost, that there are a lot of people today, more now than ever, looking into the truth for themselves. And you were doing this back when it wasn't cool. You know what I mean? Like, you've been doing this back when it wasn't a fad. There wasn't this many seekers, which I'm glad there's so many now.
Yeah.
And you've been through a lot of struggles. And I got to say, you're an inspiration for a lot of people.
Well, I appreciate it. I just, I don't think very much of myself because I know I'm just an ordinary man. But I prefer to say that I'm just an ordinary man pursuing extraordinary knowledge, because for the past 58 years, that's what I've been doing, day in and day out, is looking into the secret societies and secret orders and religious cults and where power comes from, the political power, monetary power, banking, international law, just a general looking into how the whole world works. And as I said, the more you look into, the more you will find, and the more you're not going to believe, the deeper you go. So,
do you find that Ecclesiastes?
You take that anywhere. Say it again.
Well, do you find that Ecclesiastes was true in the Bible when it says that the more you know, the more sorrow you discover?
Yeah, the worse you are. Yes, yes. There's no doubt in my mind that the more you know, the worse you will feel, the worse you're going to be. And that's why it is. There's an old saying that ignorance is bliss. Uh-huh. Bliss means happiness, just delightful happiness in life. Well, in order to be delightfully happy with your life, you have to be ignorant, ill-informed, unread, and just downright ignorant. Then you can sit and drink beer and watch television and play all the video games and go to all the ball games and just enjoy your life and never realize anything that's dark that's going on. And the reason why is because you're not just ignorant, you don't want to know. And that's the biggest problem of all, is that most people are not interested to know. They don't want to know. They want to just be happy and drink their beer and go to the movies and watch the ball games and live their life and have fun and buy the fast cars and live the best they can. And they're not interested to know what is really going on the earth today. And that's unfortunate, because the price good men pay for non-involvement in world affairs is to be ruled by evil men. And so since most people don't really care who's ruling them, they don't care how the government works, they don't care how any of this stuff works, as long as they got their beer and their money in their pocket and they've got their, and their bellies are full, then they're happy, and they've got entertainment and drugs in case you start waking up and can't handle the world. You've always got drugs and alcohol. And so that's, I've always known that's where the world is heading. And this is why we have great nations building, coming up, struggling to stay alive and then becoming great nations and ultimately to be destroyed, like the great Grecian Empire, the Roman Empire, the Babylonian Empire, the Egyptian Empire, And God knows all the other ancient peoples and races and empires that have existed in the world. And they come up and they go down. And so it's just a cycle we humans happen to be in. We never can actually get our bearings on anything to do anything. There's a lot of good people in the world that are doing magnificent things, but the general public doesn't care. And that's too bad, because you get the kind of government you ask for. You get the kind of government you deserve.
Right. I want to say this, too, though. For you guys that haven't checked out Jordan's work, you need to go to jordanmaxwellshow.com. I spent the last few days listening to your radio shows on there. And it's jordanmaxwellshow.com. And I spent the last few days listening to the radio shows. And the unbelievable amount of struggle that you went through from some of the most cruel people I've ever heard of in my life, and how you could keep going with your research is beyond me. So I commend you for that. I don't know that I want to talk about it or that you can or whatever, but I will just say that it's obvious to me that there is something out there, whether it's esoteric or exoteric, and some form of darkness that's trying to stop us from figuring out what the truth really is.
Well, I admire your ability to think that deeply, because most people have no idea in the world what's going on, but only those people who involve themselves in the study of life and where we've come from and all the systems that we live by. Once you start looking into government and education and military and commerce and law enforcement, and once you begin to see how the world we live under was put together and begin to look at the dark history of the world, and once you start doing that, you're looking for trouble, because first of all, nobody's going to want to talk to you, because nobody's going to understand what you're talking about, and it's not important because it has nothing to do with football or basketball or Paris Hilton or anything else. So why are you even bothering to talk about such nonsense when it doesn't matter to anybody? It's not important until your nation collapses, until your empire is in decline, and when your country is falling apart, and your very life and the life of your children and the life of your loved ones is now in jeopardy because the country is collapsing. There is no law. There is no anything of any intrinsic value. And then you begin to get involved with government and courts and law, and you're being arrested and you're being fined, and then you begin to wonder what in the world's going on. Well, by that time, it's way too late. You should have woke up a long time ago to find out what the world you live in is really all about.
That's true. That's so true. And I look around and I see people, in the younger generations like me that's doing this research. Ryan Gable, which is I really respect him.
I do too.
Clyde Lewis, Mark Passio, people that are doing this, and then I look at what you've been through, and I want to get together and talk to these guys and say, look, whatever happened to Jordan while he was going down this road, we've got to make sure that we have to figure out a way to keep doing this research so that this doesn't happen to us, because there's no way on earth that a 77-year-old man that's put his life into figuring out the truth and trying to spread a message for everybody that should have gone through what you've gone through. It's just, I don't know if it's your soul mission. I don't know what's going on with that. But to me, I've been thinking about it for the past few days, and it just doesn't add up. But I will say that the stuff that you did discover was groundbreaking.
Well, I appreciate it. And I believe, and I think I'm right, I believe the reason why I have suffered as I have with the loss of everything in my life, I lost my family, I lost my home, I have lost everything a man can lose. And so now I just live from one day to the next, uh, hoping that I will be able to stay alive and do something of value for the human family, because I'm not looking for a career. I'm not looking to be wealthy and popular. I want to do what I have always done, and that is to try and help my fellow man to awaken to the threats that are all about us, and the lies and the treachery that's it's involved in our governments, in our business affairs, in our personal affairs. There is just so much we don't know about the world we live in. And so I just try and the best I can. And at this moment, I have zero, nothing. But then on the other hand, I do have a lot of time now, because I own nothing and have nothing to be concerned about. I have a lot of time to sit and do what I enjoy and love doing, and that is reading and studying the world in which I live and how it really works. And I will guarantee you one thing: you have no idea in the world how this world actually, in fact, works. Nothing is what you think it is. Nothing operates the way you think it does. And none of it will make any sense to you when you're first given some dark insight into the world. It's not going to make much sense. But that's the way the world works. It's a very dark story about how we live and where our ideas have come from, and our government, how it was established, who prints your money, where do the religious belief systems that we have about God and religion and the future and all of that, where did all of this come from? And boy, what a story, what a package you're beginning to open. It's a Pandora's box of intrigue and disappointment you're not going to believe. And I enjoy talking about some of the basic things that we live by, and knowing that they are not true. They are false concepts and ideas. And this is why we're always in trouble, because we don't understand the words. We don't understand the phrases, the words, the symbols, the terms. We use terms and words all the time that we have no idea what they mean. We talk about having to go to court. If you got to go to court. Why do you have to go to court? Well, because you play basketball on a court. You play tennis on a court. Now, how do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket. Wake up. Once you begin to understand that courts are a racket, law enforcement is a racket, military-industrial complex, our military is a racket. Once you begin to see that the whole world is a business, it's just a business. Making money and controlling humans and making money and controlling other people is the name of the tune. So the best ways, the two ways that are best designed to control you, are the two things that most people do not want to talk about, and that's religion and government. I mean, I grew up hearing people saying that many years ago. Well, the two things we don't talk about in this house is religion and politics.
That's right. A lot of people say that. They just don't want to talk about it.
That's right. They don't want to talk about it. But the reason why, you think that the reason why is because it might offend your family or friends and other people with other beliefs. And so it might offend them. So just forget it and don't bring the subject up, and then you won't offend anyone. But those who if everybody thinks the same, it means nobody's thinking at all. And therefore, why would you not want to talk about the two ways in which mankind has been leading mankind? The human race is being led by religion and government. And why not talk about how we humans are being ruled and where we've come from? Where are we now? And where are we getting ready to go now? Since nobody knows anything about religion and politics, that's why we're in the mess we're in today. There is no freedom, there is no justice, there is no law, there is no order. Why? Because the human race has chosen not to look at government and religion and the foundations of human society. Well, I have, and I'm telling you, it's an extraordinary story of betrayal. So you need to wake up, do your homework.
And if you just get, how easy it is to get, when it comes to the law, to get your license suspended, it's very easy.
Yeah.
And then you're caught in a trap because you can't go to work to pay your fines. You can't drive. You can't do anything. And if you get, or at least where I'm from, because we have to drive everywhere, and you get caught in a trap, right? So you either have to take the risk on driving on a suspended license so you can go make money, and they'll pull you over for any reason, and then you're caught in the system. I got caught in that system not too long ago, and it took me thousands of dollars and forever to get out. And the only crime that I committed was I was behind on child support maybe for 1 month. That's the crime I committed. And I had my son the whole time. So that doesn't even make sense.
Yep. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Once you begin to see how our system of life is put together, where it came from, and how it got started, and we started off as a republic. Back in 1776, we started off as a republic. Today, we are referred to as a democracy. But the word democracy today, not the way it was maybe understood in the Grecian Empire, that's where we get the word democracy from, the ancient Greeks. But today, saying that America is a democracy and that we Americans are all over the world helping to spread democracy, you need to define your terms.
Right.
And university and colleges and professors will tell you, you need to define the words you use, or don't use them if you don't know what you're talking about. The very word democracy today means, whether you understand it or not, whether you believe it or not, is irrelevant. I've been talking for some 58 years and teaching people around the world how to think and how to do research on words and terms. And nobody's going to probably be able to handle this, but the fact of the matter is that today in the Western world, in America and Canada and Australia, etc., in the whole Western Christian world, the word democracy means Marxist-Leninism, communism, straight out of the Soviet Union. All communist countries today, and if you go back to the 40s, and the beginning of the Soviet Union, and then with the coming of communism to China, and then to Cuba, and to all the other communist countries that the Soviet Union was operating in, you will find that all of those countries, all are officially recognized in encyclopedias as democracies. They're called people's democracies, the People's Democratic Republic of Cuba, the People's Democratic Republic of China, the People's Democratic Republic of North Korea, the People's Democratic Republic. And so that's what we have become today. We are a People's Democratic Republic, just like Soviet Union, Communist China, Soviet communism everywhere. And so today, the whole idea of a democracy actually is a Marxist-Leninist Soviet communist term. You need to wake up and understand what's going on in the capital, and why do you call Washington, D.C. the capital? And it's an extraordinary story of betrayal where the American people have no idea in the world where words come from. America is one half democratic, Marxist-Leninist, Soviet communist. Period.
That
End of
reminds me.
sentence.
I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Bill Cooper, but I used to listen to his old radio show. And
I knew Bill Cooper for many, many years. I was on his show a couple of times. I've known him very personally for a long time. Yeah. Go on.
He revealed a lot. I mean, a lot. And what you're saying is a lot of the stuff he was talking about. The only thing about Bill Cooper that I think that kind of bothered me was that I don't know, or maybe I'm wrong, but I think he was not willing to look past Christianity.
Yep.
And I could be wrong about that. I haven't listened to all of his latest radio shows. If he was wrong about something, he'd say I was wrong. He was dedicated to the truth, and I believe that he got killed for it. I really believe that. But
I think so too. I believe that. But there's more to that story than meets the eye. I knew Bill personally. I was on stage with him. I was on his radio show a couple of times. I knew him personally for a long time. And so I know things about Bill Cooper that most people don't. And so, I'm not going to get into it now, but there's more to Bill Cooper than meets the eye. And so I'm so very sorry for what happened to him, because he was a very interesting man. And he did do a lot of good, and but
he wanted people to wake up too. That's all he wanted. He wanted people to wake, just like you. And the one thing that I really commend you for is your work is your willingness to look past religion. I don't think that he admitted it in his first show that he didn't understand the bright and morning star, the whole metaphor there. And I heard, and I listened to your show about that, and I was like, you really dug into the truth there, and some of that stuff, I don't know if you want to talk about it now, but some of that stuff people don't want to hear, but I believe it's true.
Well, I mean, remember, that's what the story of the Bible. Jesus said, what they have done to me, they will do to you. They had not listened to me, so what makes you think they're going to listen to you? For what the slave is no greater than the master. What they have done to me, they will do to you. So that's the bottom line, is that there's a war going on between truth and light and darkness.
That's a fact. And if you guys need to check that out, the show, because you guys know how I talk about that, how both Jesus and Lucifer called themselves the bright and morning star in the Bible.
But Jesus is Lucifer.
That's the whole point. And I mean, I didn't know if you wanted to get into that or not. But
yeah, we could do that. That's very, very important, I think. Yeah, I would love to talk about that.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead. Because it has to do with the new age. Christians are always bad-mouthing Lucifer, thinking that's the devil. And they misunderstand and don't do their homework, and they're not really interested in theology. Excuse me. But, theology is a very important subject, but most people have no idea in the world about theology and the religions of the world, where they've come from and what the words mean, what the symbols mean. But they talk about Lucifer being the devil. Well, according to all the biblical, if you go to a biblical or a Christian seminary library, or go to a Christian bookstore and look at all of the dictionaries and encyclopedias and all the reference works on Christianity, look up the word Lucifer. Do something you've never done before. Do something really interesting you've never done before. Go read a book. Try and educate yourself about what you're thinking, what you're talking about before you open your mouth. Because the Bible even says it is better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and prove it. So I am suggesting that you need to know what these words mean. Jesus is Lucifer. I don't care what you think about that. That's what the name of the tune is. If you go to the Bible reference work, and look up Lucifer, you will find that I'm right. Jesus said, I am Lucifer. So that's a whole subject we can get into if you want.
Well, it's always boggled me because I grew up a Christian, and it was one of the first questions that I asked my father. I said that, people refer to Lucifer as the bright and morning star, the light bringer. How is this a bad thing? And my father would explain to me who Lucifer was, the fallen angel, or he's the same as Satan. And I would read the text and I'd be like, I don't think that's what it's saying here. And then you read in Revelations, Jesus calls himself the bright and morning star. And you're right. When you look up the word Lucifer, that's what it is. So
that's exactly right.
I don't know, and I haven't found a text. I've read the Bible. I've looked into the Apocrypha. I've looked into the only thing that I've ever found out about Lucifer after reading all this stuff is that, it's, how hath thou fallen? That's it, that he fell. Yeah. That's it. That's all I've ever found.
Yes, but now you need to understand when that's in Isaiah 14, 12 through 14. Okay, but that was not talking about the devil. All reference works on the earth that deal with Christianity would tell you Isaiah 14, 12 through 14 was dealing with the king of Babylon, with an earthly king, in which the Bible pictured him as being a big star. He wanted to be the big star, a big movie star, a big important man to run his whole country. And so he wanted to be a star. That's where we get the idea of being a star. Lucifer was a bright morning star. And so Isaiah 14, 12 through 14 is talking about a king who thought of himself as so illustrious and so powerful that he was the biggest shining star on the earth. And yet God is going to bring him down to his knees and ultimately destroy him. And so the word is Halil in Hebrew, which means a bright morning star, or someone who is very bright and very important. And so you get people like that who are Luciferians, like Obama, who thought he was God who created the universe, like all these politicians who think that they're profoundly wise and brilliant and powerful, and then find out that they're knocked down by sexual stuff they're into. Mm-hmm. They lose their home, they lose their family, they lose everything. And wake up one day and find out you're not, for being so great, you weren't that great. And so Lucifer originally, if you want to go back to the first, and that's the way you should do all your research, is go back to the beginning. The very first time the word Lucifer, what it meant was the planet Venus. Venus was called by the ancient Romans Lucifer, and by the ancient Greeks, they called it the bright morning star. It goes back to ancient Egypt. Venus was the bright morning star because in the ancient Egyptian system of religion, in the mornings, early mornings, 4 o'clock to 4:30, the priests in Egypt would go out and on their knees. They would be on their knees and they would be looking eastward. And in the east, every morning, a bright morning star would rise. We call it Venus. But Venus was not the light of the world. It didn't light the whole world. But Venus announced the coming of the great light who would light the world. So Venus announced the coming every morning of the coming of the sun. And the idea was that the sun was the light of the world. And that's why Jesus is called God's Son. He's the light of the world. Of course the sun is the light of the world. What else lights our world if it's not the sun?
Right.
But whose sun? Now, who owns the sun? Well, nobody owns the sun but God. Okay, so it's God's sun. And God's sun is the light of the world. And Venus announces his coming. So
Gotcha.
Venus was the light bringer. He's not the light, but he's bringing the light.
I want to talk about a little bit about this, and as we move on, we're already halfway through the show, guys. We're here with Jordan Maxwell. This is Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Root. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Sunday on the Fringe FM, the Secret FM. Message our Facebook page
to give back to mankind. You can download Parallel.
And I do a show like radio with Dave Scott, Monday, the Kurt Green Hour.
With the Spaced Out Radio team, we're going to have the mother of the Matrix, Miss Sophia Stewart, will be joining us. Now, as we left the break, we were talking about the correspondence, or I guess the relation between Jesus and Lucifer. And you said if you do your research enough, you'll find that Jesus is Lucifer. And you're also explaining Venus and the sun, which that has perplexed me a little bit more than the name, I would say, because the bright morning star, we all see it. It's Venus. But then I always wonder, well, could he be talking about the sun? And you're saying that the light bringer is bringing the sun, unless I got you wrong there.
No. The whole idea in the ancient world, the way they viewed it, not the way we think about it today, but the way the ancient peoples who gave us all of these ideas, the way they saw it was that the sun was the light that lit the human world up. And the sun was not a god. The sun merely represented the qualities that God obviously must have. So because the sun is filled with light, it's brilliant, it's intellectual and superior enlightenment. So that's what God is. He's very enlightened and very intelligent, filled with light. The sun also grows keeps us warm and grows our food, and we enjoy the sunlight because our bodies need the sun. And so the sun represented all of the wonderful qualities that obviously God must have. He keeps us alive. He keeps us warm and protected. He provides light so we don't stumble around in the dark forever. And he grows our food for us. And so the idea was that energy was life. I mean, we know that if you got a battery and it runs out of energy, you say it's a dead battery.
Sure.
And if you're totally exhausted, you flop on the bed and you say, "I'm just dead, tired," meaning you have no energy. All right. So the ancient Egyptians said that the sun was pure energy. They knew that it's pure energy. But the problem is it's giving its energy away. And so since the sun was giving its energy away, energy is life, he's giving his life so that you might live. Because if the energy from the sun didn't give you its energy, your food wouldn't grow. Your planet would be frozen.
Fascinating.
And you wouldn't even be here. So therefore, it didn't. The sun doesn't belong to anybody on the earth. It obviously belongs to heaven, or it belongs to God, so to speak. So therefore, it's God's sun, and he's the light of the world, and he is giving his life so that you might live.
I got to say, Jordan, that feels true to me. It really does, because scientifically, esoterically, exoterically, scientifically, spiritually, everything you just said is true.
It's true. The sun is giving his life so that you might live, because the Egyptians said if the sun kept its energy, then it would last forever. It would be forever and ever. but he's not going to last forever and ever. Why? Because he's sharing his light, his warmth, and his caring for the whole universe. He's for the whole solar system. So he's sharing his light and love for you, and there's only one Son. Thank God, there's only one.
Right.
And so therefore, he's the only begotten Son of God. This is the only one God gave us, is this Son. So it's the only begotten one. We don't have 10 of them. And so you begin to see how the Son was a metaphor for Jesus, and how the word Jesus is actually from the Son. It was iousis in Greek. Iousis is I-E-S-U-S or I-E-O-U-S, iousis. And then when it comes to the Latin, it becomes iousis, I-E-S-U-S, and I's are interchangeables with J. J and I are the same
That's
letter.
right. Yeah.
And so instead of iousis, it becomes J-esis. And so Jesus is actually the Son, God's Son, the light of the world, who has given his life so that you might live. And once you get into that, it's opening up a whole world of interesting astrotheology about all the stories you read in the Bible about Jesus are applying and talking about the heavens. Well, that's where God is up in heaven. Yeah, well, and so, all these stories we read in the New Testament about Jesus, they're talking about the S-U-N, not S-O-N, S-U-N. And so, like Jesus went to the marriage feast of Cana. Mm-hmm. And the marriage feast of Cana where Jesus' mother, Mary, which is Mary, we say M-A-R-Y. No, it's M-A-R-I. Mari, not Mary. Mari means holy and pure, clean and pure. And so obviously Jesus' mother was holy and clean and pure. So she was Mari. No, we say Mary. And so at the marriage feast of Cana, Mary, the mother, asked Jesus, when the wine was ran out, she asked Jesus to go out and draw water and change the water into wine. Well, that's exactly what happens. Mother Earth, Mother Nature. We call our Earth Mother. So she's Mother Nature, Mother Earth, asked God's Son to draw water. Well, that Son does draw water. And then to turn the water into wine, the water that's drawn is in clouds. The clouds cause rain. The rains grow the grapes, and they smash the grapes, and so you change water into wine. So the whole idea is it's talking about the spring. This is why it's called the the Passover. It's an extraordinary story. I mean, the Jews have a celebration for spring, to celebrate spring, and they call it the Passover. Why? Because the sun on the first week of spring has passed over the equator, coming back to the northern hemisphere. And so all of the religious teachings in Christianity and Judaism come from the northern hemisphere. We don't have any teachings in Christianity or Judaism comes from the southern hemisphere. We don't have anything in Judaism or Christianity from the Mayas and the Aztecs and the Incas and all of that. We have only from the northern hemisphere.
Sure.
And so therefore, once you understand where religions have come from and what all these words mean, it's actually a fascinating and beautiful and incredibly intricate story that has been misunderstood. And that's why today there is so much violence and ill feelings and violence and wars going on, because nobody in Judaism understands where Judaism came from. Zero, nobody. And the few people that do, the few professors in Israel that do know where the teachings of Israel of Judaism have come from, they're not talking about it.
Why?
And nobody seems to understand where the teachings of Christianity have come from. And if you do know, you better keep your mouth shut, because you're going to lose everything if you don't. And so I'm just amazed at how much we don't know. It's an extraordinary story when you start breaking down the religious belief systems in Judaism, in Christianity, and in Islam, and where they come from, and what they actually mean. I mean, the Jews will tell you God's name is so important and so holy that you cannot use His name. You can only represent it with four letters, which is which is yes, exactly. And so it's four Hebrew letters. It's called tetragrammaton.
Mm-hmm.
The tetragrammaton. Well, tetra means four. Gramma means letter, and so that's what it is, four letters, tetragramma. Aton, A-T-O-N, was the sun god. The sun in Egypt was called the Aton. So it's the tetragramma, the four letters for the sun, tetragrammaton. And so the worship in Judaism has been an amalgamation of three basic concepts in the ancient world. The sun, the stars, and the moon. So Judaism was a moon cult. Thousands of years ago, Judaism was a moon cult. They worshiped the moon.
Where can I find literature about that? That's the one thing I found a lot of stuff about the Christian background. You know, it goes all the way back to Egypt and even further than that with the story of Horus and Osiris. And
that's right.
But the Judaism is one of the oldest religions we have, and I've been trying to figure it out, where it came from, you know.
Well, it came from originally, Judaism goes back into the ancient world, but not Judaism as we know it today. Judaism as we know it today is not a BC religion. It's not BC religion at all. The Judaism we know today came to us in the AD. Within the last 1,000 years. It has nothing to do, because there was no. I'm just telling you what the facts of the matter are that's in reference books. The Judaism, or the Israel, I should say, Israel, we're told, was ancient Israel. In the ancient world, there was a place called Israel. Well, an actual point of fact, there was no ancient Israel ever existed, period. End of sentence. Israel never existed. There was no ancient Israel. And today, finally, there's a lot of professors and theological thinkers in Israel who are writing books and giving lectures. You could go on the web and listen to these Israeli professors and teachers talking about the fact that ancient Israel never existed, period. All of those ancient stories about ancient Israel and King David, there was no King David.
Yeah, the whole idea said the same thing.
The whole idea of King David was connected to the word Druid, King Druid, D-R-U-I-D, not D-A-V-I-D. King Druid, not King David. And so once you understand that Judaism is basically a moon religion based on the worship of the moon, and therefore the moon god was called Yahweh, Y-H-W-H, Yahweh, and the moon god in Arabia was called Allah. So Allah is Yahweh, Yahweh is Allah. And they're both worshipers of the moon.
Wow. So I'm thinking of the Kabbalah here. I'm starting to think about that. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's
all right.
A lot of this stuff's starting to make sense to me.
Yeah, well, listen, when the kids went out, not too many years ago, there was a fad where kids would drive by, they would stick their behinds out the window, and they would call it, and they would say they were mooning you.
Right.
Okay, why? It's because Moses asked God in Genesis if God would let him see him. Moses asked God, "Can I see you? Would you show me what you look like?" And the Bible says in Genesis that God said to Moses, "No man can see me and live. But since you have been so faithful and such dedicated faithful to me, I'll show you my butt. How's that? I'll bend over and show you my behind. And but I'm not going to show you my face because you're not important enough to see my face. And so Moses, goes behind a rock, and God says, "Are you ready?" And he pulls his pants down and shows him his butt. That's in the Bible. And read where Moses saw God. He saw his behind.
Mm.
But God was Yahweh, which is a moon god. And so therefore Moses was being mooned by Yahweh. So that's where we get the idea of mooning somebody. And this is why on the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, go in the Vatican and go on the web and look at the Sistine Chapel, and you will see God bending over and showing his butt to Moses. That's on the Sistine Chapel. It's an incredible story about how silly stories are so venerated today by people who don't know what the words even mean. They have no idea where all of this stuff comes from. I mean, they talk about Jesus the Christ and have no idea in the world what the word Christ means. Where does the word come from? They go to church and have no idea in the world what the word church means. They think they understand. Church comes from a Scottish word kirk, K-E-R-K, or K-I-R-K, Kirk. This is why in Hollywood they have a Star Trek with Captain Kirk, because Kirk is a Scottish word for the church. And so the church is nothing more than a business, a corporation. And so therefore Captain Kirk, he's the captain of the ship, and the church is the captain of the ship. And so today we have Captain Kirk, and the church is taking mankind where it's never been before. And what's the name of the instrument? Enterprise. Enterprise is money, banking. The church has taken the human race where it's never been before. Captain Kirk on the Enterprise. And so when you understand, because you have to live in Los Angeles and Hollywood for 48 or 58 years and be in the spin of things and know what these writers are writing in Hollywood, know how Hollywood works and where the word Hollywood comes from, you have to know that the ancient Druids that ruled in Europe for 1,000 years before the Roman Empire, all of Europe, north, east, west, and southern Europe was ruled by Druids. And this is where we get the word news, north, east, west, and south, N-E-W-S. Anything that happens in the north, east, west, or south is news. Once you begin to understand what the words mean, where these concepts and ideas have come from, you find out that for 1,000 years before Rome, all of Europe was run by a holy organization called the Druids. And the Druids were the priests, the legislators, the government, the police. They were everything. Anything that was anything in the ancient world, you had to be Druid. And so today, America is a Druid country. We are Druids here, but you don't know that because we don't read. And one of the most important symbols in the ancient Druid system in Europe was a magic wand. All the Druids who were important in the system of things used magic wands. And so like Mickey Mouse would use a magic wand. And our orchestra leaders today use a magic wand. They're telling you to play to their tune, not yours. So their orchestra leaders use a magic wand.
Well, do these symbols and words have power over us that we don't know, though?
Of course they do. And this is why I was going to say that magic wands in the ancient world were always made out of the wood of a holly tree. It's made out of Hollywood. Get it? Wow. And so once you begin to understand that Hollywood is a Druidic magical establishment, and it's a real, de jure, legitimate magic. Not just on film. No. There's a real magical system that causes that sacrifices children, sacrifices babies. It's into pornography. It's into all kinds of crime and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It all has to do with the dark side, with what we call black magic, the dark magical system in Hollywood. That's why they're so wealthy. That's why they're so profoundly powerful. You need to wake up and find out that's how the world works. All of it is dark, demonic depravity and coming out of the ancient world, and we call it religion, government, and it's just an extraordinary story, and that's why we're in trouble today. The whole world is not what you think it is. It's far, far, far darker than you can even imagine. We could talk for the next 5 hours. I tell you things you've never heard.
I imagine. But, I mean, if you guys want to listen to more of this stuff, you can go to jordanmaxwellshow.com, and he's got more there as well. But what I was saying earlier is that Lon Milo Duquette wrote a book called The Key to Solomon's Key. And what he was trying to do was, he wanted to, in the beginning of that book, was to find out any evidence of Solomon and David and, any evidence of this before he went down that road of revealing the magical rituals and stuff. And there was none. And he said that there was no evidence of any tribe or King David or Solomon or anything like that.
That's right. Never was. There was no King David. There was no King Solomon. There was no ancient Israel. None of it ever existed. It's just a story. It's the greatest story ever told. Yeah, but it's just a story. And then you find out that Solomon is actually the three names of the sun in the ancient esoteric languages of the ancient East. Out of Egypt, Sol, first of all, is Roman, from the Roman Empire. S-O-L is the sun, Sol. And Om, O-M, is Hindu, for the power of the sun to create. The priest of Om, O-M. And then the word On, O-N, is actually Heliopolis. Look it up in encyclopedia. Look up the word O-N, and it will tell you O-N is the ancient name of a city in Egypt called today Heliopolis. Helios is the sun, Opolis is a city. So Heliopolis is the city of the sun. But Egyptians didn't call the city of the sun Heliopolis. That's Greek. They called it On, O-N. This is why when you walk into a room, you flip a light switch on, because on meant sun. And so if you have a new kind of light, it's N-E-W-O-N or N-E-O-N, neon. Neon is a new light. A new kind of light is neon. So O-N means light, the sun. And Sol is the sun. So you got Sol, Om, and On. It's the three names of the sun in the esoteric languages. Solomon. There was no King Solomon. There was no King Solomon's temple. There was no King Solomon's mines. It's just a story.
But does the story hold something that's, what I'm trying to ask is does this story hold something that has an esoteric meaning that's good and true, maybe? I don't know.
Yes. It does. It has a very important and very, very important spiritual truth that's hidden from you so that you will not see it and you're not supposed to know about it. But only the people who run this planet are supposed to know the hidden story. And so that's why we have exoteric and esoteric, meaning the exoteric is the stuff everybody knows about. The esoteric is what you don't know. And like George Carlin says about the people who run our planet, it's a big club and you ain't in it.
Right.
So you're not supposed to know anything. You just go to your church and drink your beer and watch the television and watch a ball game. That's all you need to know. Leave the important things like running the world to the people who are smart enough to do it. And therefore, that's why we're in the trouble today, because we have no idea in the world what's really going on today on the earth. And it's going to scare you when you finally find out.
Can I ask your opinion on something, though? I mean, and you just give it to me straight here, but when I study the mysteries, whether it's Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, even the Golden Dawn, it seems like they're wanting to reveal this stuff and empower a person. However, I get the only feedback I ever get is that these societies are evil, and yet all of the information that you're talking about is revealed in these studies and texts and secret societies and stuff. So are they good? Are they bad? Have they been infiltrated? Are they running the world? It's confusing to some, and I know it's confusing to me.
Yeah, and you're right. It is confusing, and there is a story. There is a way to understand it. But how much longer do we have on the show?
About 30 minutes.
30 minutes?
That's it.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, we could talk about it for a little bit if you wish.
Yeah, I mean, because I've learned, to be honest with you, I've learned a lot of the stuff that I know, and that's helped my life in prayer and study and ritual and meditation through esoteric teachings, from even teachings that came out of these societies, and yet they seem to be
one
evil.
of the greatest.
I don't know.
One of the greatest teachers that ever lived. And I've been on the earth for 77 years, and I've looked at all of it, and I've heard it all, and I've traveled all over the world and heard them all. But one of the greatest teachers that ever lived was a dear friend of mine. His name was Manly P. Hall.
Right.
And
Yeah,
Manly P.
awesome.
Hall was a dear friend of mine. And when he passed away, I got a phone call from his university, president of the university from Manly Hall's university. And he told me, Mr. Hall expressly left you something in his will. And if you want to come to the university and pick it up. And I asked him, what is it? What did he do? What did he leave me? And he said, I'm not going to tell you. You just come and pick it up. And when I got there, Manly P. Hall had left me in his will and had left it to me, all of his journals, from the very first journal he ever wrote, all of his research journals. He left it all to me. And it was shocking to me. I was absolutely shocked to know that all of the research that he had been doing in his life, starting back in 1936 to the day he died, he left it all to me. So, and I was just amazed at this man and his brilliance. And so many Christians call him demonic and devil worshiper and all that kind of stuff, when actually he was one of the greatest spiritual teachers the world has ever known.
That's a fact.
He never ever championed any particular teaching. He never had a particular religious bent or view. What he did with his whole life was to simply explain all of the religious and philosophical teachings of the whole world, where they came from, what they meant, what the words meant, and how they were to be understood in the ancient world as opposed to how we understand them today. It was the most extraordinary experience listening to a man that has that much wisdom and knowledge to talk about any subject and the philosophy or religions of the whole world and understand them correctly and teach them succinctly. What a brilliant mind. And today, Christians who do not have the wherewithal to tie his shoes call him demonic and depraved because he understood the world of religion. And so I understand that there's a profound misunderstanding about religion, and people who are religious, who are quick to put other people down because they happen to know something that the church, that they don't know.
Sure.
A classic example is when I was a kid. I asked a bishop. I mean, it's a big story, but I'll just give you the Reader's Digest version, a very quick story. When I was like 9 or 10 years old, I got confirmed in the Catholic Church. And we were told that tonight at the confirmation service, the bishop may ask you children if you have any questions. He'll answer your questions for you. And so that night we were told not to ask any questions. We're not supposed to do that. So that night the bishop, after the confirmation service was over, he asked the children if we had any questions. And I stood up and I said, yes, I have a question. And I said, my father works with torches, like a welder. And I said, if there was an angel standing next to me, could I take a torch and burn him? Would it hurt the angel if I hit him with a torch and burn him?
Not a bad question.
And he said, well, no. And I said, why not? And he said, well, you can't burn an angel. And I said, why can't you burn an angel? He said something to the effect that fire is a natural phenomenon. You got to have plastic or wood or paper or something. It's a natural thing, but angels are not natural. They're preternatural. They're not of this world. They're spirits. And I said, well, why can't I burn an angel? And he said, because you can't burn an angel because angels are spirits, and you can't burn a spirit. You can't even see one, much less burn one. And so I said, well, then why am I worried about going to hell when my spirit will burn forever if you can't burn a spirit?
Right. Good question.
Yeah, as a stupid kid, 9 years old, 10 years old. And the bishop and everybody in the church looked like a bunch of deer in the headlights. Nobody ever thought about that. Nobody ever asked a question. A 10-year-old kid asked. And everybody just sat there looking at each other. Nobody ever thought to ask a simple question. And so that's the way I started out. And after that, I ended up putting Alka-Seltzer in the holy water, and I began to really understand what was really going on with the religion, because the adults around me in my world that I grew up in didn't know a thing about nothing.
It's just handed down.
Know is
that's it. Just handed down from generation to generation, and they got to go with it.
That's all it is. You just go with the flow, and everybody will love you.
Jordan, and I'm taking this opportunity because if there's anybody I wanted to ask this to, there's probably 3 people on the entire planet that I would want to ask this to, and Manly P. Hall's not with us anymore, so let's say 2. Okay?
Yeah.
The mystery teachings, the secret societies that teach this stuff, back in the day they kept it secret because, frankly, they would get strung up if they were talking about this stuff in the streets. But when I learned these things, Manly P. Hall was an honorary 33rd degree because he knew just as much as they did,
That's right. That's exactly right.
Are they evil? If they are evil, why are they teaching such truth in their material?
Yeah, well, that's a big question, and it requires us a bit of time to answer it, because basically the people that run this planet today, they know. I have sat and talked with people that are very high up in this world that you would never even suspect that I know. Wouldn't even suspect that I would know these people. But I've been in their company, and I listen to them and play dumb as I'm talking to them. I play dumb. I act like I'm just inquiring because I'm just a stupid guy who wants to know. And so they treat me with kindness and try and explain things to me. But I already know. I want to hear what they're going to say. And then I then begin to see that the people who are running this planet, the really smart guys at the top of the world, they already know all of this stuff. They are members of secret societies, fraternal orders. They're highly educated. They go to special schools. And so, they are not bothered by religion. They're not bothered by philosophies and different ideas that different people on the earth have. They don't care about that. The people who run this planet are interested in one thing, and that's power, money, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, period. That's what runs the planet, period. And so that's the only thing they're concerned about. They don't care about your religious belief because they understand where it all came from to start with. And so I could sit for the next 8 hours and explain to you all kinds of ideas and philosophies that you've heard in Christian religion and in the Jewish religion, and where they really came from, what they actually mean. And once you begin to finally formulate in your mind how all of this stuff came down to us, how it all got here, and where it came from in the ancient world, and what the words mean, what the terms mean, and begin to understand that in the English language there is something called, if you study England and study English in England, and go to the best universities to study the King's English, you will note that there was something called, in the ancient and medieval world, something called the lazy O. The lazy O. Look it up in English. And it simply meant that the translators of the English language and the people who were formulating and creating our English language, they came across a problem with the word sun, S-U-N. And then there was in German, because English is Low German, so in the German language, sun is S-O-N-N-E, or S-O-N is the thing that comes up in the morning, is spelled S-O-N. But we call it but we spell it S-U-N. No, it's S-O-N. But in English, it's S-U-N. And so it's called the lazy O problem in English, where the translators just decided to just translate it either a U or O. It doesn't matter. Just either use the U or the O, and it just doesn't matter. It's the same thing.
Okay.
And so they gave us two words, S-U-N and S-O-N. Why? Because they were lazy. They didn't want to really look into it, which one was being talked about. So today you have a son. If you have a boy, then you have your son, and he is the light of your life.
That's right.
And so, therefore, he's your son. Well, then God has a son, and the son is the light of the world. Of course, the son is the light of the world. And so, therefore, Jesus is God's son, the light of the world, and he has 12 followers, which is the 12 signs of the zodiac, or the 12 months of the year. And 13, if you take Jesus with his 12, makes 13. 13 is a number in ancient Jewish theology which represents perfect government. 13 was perfect government, so you have Jesus and the 12, or the Son and the 12 helpers, or the Son and the 12 signs of the zodiac. So you have the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 months of the year, and the Son. And therefore it's 13. Well, 13 is perfect government, and the number 8 in ancient Hebrew and the ancient systems of magic, 8 was the number of infinity. 8 was it was the only number that you can write on a piece of paper and never lift your pencil or pen from the paper. An 8 can be made over and over and over and over. And so if you lay an 8 down on its side, it becomes a symbol for infinity, because it never stops. You can make an 8 forever without lifting your pencil. And so 8 was the number of new beginnings. You were always starting something new on the 8th, and when you're 8 years old. And so everything was new on the 8th. So 8 and 13 were important. You start something new, and you do it on 13. This is why they had to have They had to have the revolution in 1776, because 1 and 7 is 8 and 7 and 6 is 13. Get it? So all the ideas about how government formed and all the concepts about outlaws, you have no idea in the world what's been for thousands of years.
Now, right here we had some audio issues. I want to apologize. I restarted the feed, but he kept talking about where the word church comes from, which was a Scottish word named kirk. So we'll pick up there, and you might have to look that up, but that's where it segued at. I apologize, guys.
They're ripping off the church does.
Well, that makes sense to me. It's just that makes a lot of sense to me. The biggest thing that I'm worried about, though, is and I guess you did answer my question, but the question I have is going to take some deep looking into, as far as the.
And I know what the question is ultimately this esoteric knowledge good or bad?
Right.
And well, the one thing I will say is that if you delve into the kind of study that I have done all my life, you are going to pay a terrible price. Because if you want to know a little something, then you can learn a little something. Just read a book. But if you really want to know more about it, well, then you could take a special class or go to a special school or whatever to learn more about a particular subject. But if that's not good enough, well, you can always go to college for 8 to 10 years and really study a subject and come out with a master's or a doctorate on the subject. but that's going to really cost you. So the more you want to know, the more you're going to pay. Well, if you really want to know the bottom line on the dark secrets of the world you live in, you are going to pay a terrible price. You're going to wish you had never started to learn.
Oh, man, that's sad because I'm curious.
Yeah, you're going to encounter demons, demonic depravity, dark spirits. You're going to encounter the real powers behind the world in which you live that don't mind killing people, murdering people, raping, sex, drugs, rock and roll. It's all a very dark story about the world we live in, where it's come from, and where we're going. And most people are not up for hearing this kind of stuff. So I understand.
David J. in the chat room wants to know, what's the difference, and it's a pretty good question, when they talk about the Son of God and then Jesus being the Son of Man.
Yeah. It's really not important. That's one of the things about theology, that you can pick certain words and really go for hours upon hours of looking into, but that really is not important. The bottom line that's of real importance is you need to understand that the very word son, S-O-N, is synonymous with S-U-N. And so therefore, Jesus is actually the Son. And therefore, the Son, it represents light. And so God's Son is the light of the world, but he's doing battle. He is battling for you against who? Against the Prince of Darkness. The Prince of Darkness. Darkness was the great dragon, the great fearful enemy of the human race thousands of years ago. They didn't have air conditioners and beautiful homes and spotlights and lighting homes. They didn't have any of that. So it got dark at night. And when it got dark at night, that's when the predator animals came out. That's when it becomes very scary. You could be robbed and raped or eaten by predator animals. And it was freezing cold. And so darkness was just evil. It was just bad. So that's why we get the idea that the Prince of Darkness. But the Prince of Darkness, his name was Set. In Egypt, it was Set, S-E-T, was the Prince of Darkness.
Right.
And we still say it gets dark at sunset because he's God's son, but the word Set was the name of the god of darkness in Egypt, Set. And so, when the sun came up in the morning, that his name was Horus, and the mythology about Horus was that he walked across the sky. Horus walks across the sky in 12 steps. And that gives us what we call the 12-step program. You go to the first grade to the 12th. It's a 12-step program. Alcoholics have a 12-step program. And so Horus was the original 12-step program. Horus came up in the morning, and when it comes up, when it shows itself on the horizon, that's Horus. His name was H-O-U-R-S, H-O-R-U-S, Horus.
Right.
And we changed it from H-O-R-U-S to H-O-U-R-S, but 12 hours. No, it's 12 Horuses. You just interchange the U and the R, becomes 12 Horuses, becomes 12 hours. And so therefore Horus walks across the sky in 12 steps. So a little bit later, Horus of the second step, he's a little bit higher. Horus of the third step, he's moved up a bit higher until he hits Horus of the sixth step. When he's directly overhead, he becomes known as the Most High God. Why? Because it don't get any higher than high noon. And that's why Jesus is in the temple teaching all the wise men at 12, not 12 years old, 12 noon. So when the sun is at 12 noon is the Most High. It's called high noon. And so then he walks down. Now he's walking further, the Horus of the 8th step, Horus of the 9th step, and finally Horus is going to die at 6. And so Horus walks across the sky in 12 steps. Now, if you want to take Horus, Horus was the god of light. And so if you want to impersonate light as a person, make it into a person for the story, it would be Lucifer. Lucifer was a god of light. And so Lucius in Latin means light. And so therefore, if you were to personalize Lucifer into a person, you would call him Luke. Luke is a shortened form of Lucifer.
Right.
All right. So therefore, you got Luke Skywalker.
I was just fixing to say that.
Yeah. Luke walks across the sky in 12 steps. Star Wars. All of this stuff is fascinating when you begin to see where all of the religions and philosophies and Hollywood and movies, entertainment and words and terms, the whole world is a business. And most people have no idea in the world where to start. That's why I have dedicated my whole life for 58 years to understanding all of this stuff. And I put it out. It's if you go on my website, again, you're right. My website is Jordan Maxwell Show, SHOW. Very important you add that on. Jordan Maxwell Show is my website. And if you go on jordanmaxwellshow.com, then you will see on the home page, you will see an invitation to join another website I have called the research website, Jordan Maxwell's Research Society website. All that is just another website I have where I have a webmaster who is uploading every day as much as he can on all of the stuff I talk about, all the documents, pictures, audio, video, words, terms, where religions come from, where all the governments come from, how law works, all kinds of strange stuff you've never heard. I put onto a website called Jordan Maxwell Research Society. And if you go on Jordan Maxwell Show, you can then see my Research Society, click on it and join. You have to join the Research Society because for some 45 years I've been out on the trail, roaming around the world, roaming around America, teaching people, and I've come to the point where I don't have the old stuff anymore to do that. So now I just put all of my work on a website, and if you want it, you can go there and view it all. It's a very big website right now, but it's going to get a whole lot bigger. I have thousands of articles yet to put on there, but my webmaster is only one man, and he can only do so much. So we're putting it on little by little every day, but it's an enormous website already. So go on Jordan Maxwell Show and join my Research Society. That's where it's all going to be.
Man, I recommend anybody go do that as fast as possible. But I'm sorry about the audio issues, guys, but it was only a few minutes there. You know what? I didn't get to ask you the question Dave Scott was wanting me to talk to you about was he told me, he said, you need to talk to Jordan about his alien girlfriend. And I don't know if it was your girlfriend or a girl you dated or met, but that's what he said. Yeah. But interestingly enough, I was going to ask you about what you thought about ETs and life on other planets. And
they're here. They're here for sure. There's no doubt in my mind that they are here. And they are very legitimate. They're very de jure, and they're just as real as you are. You can bet on that. So, and I know because of what I've actually seen with my own eyes and experienced myself. So, you can believe what you want to, but once you've met them and once you've seen one and once you've had an impact with one, one-on-one, then there won't be any question ever again in your mind. You will know. There's a big difference between believing in something and knowing it for sure. I know for sure that there is other life forms on this earth that are not of this world. They're not called supernatural. The word is preta. Preternatural means not of this world, not from here at all. And there's no doubt in my mind that there are extraterrestrial life forms here. No doubts about it whatsoever. So we could talk about that another time.
Sure. But real quick, well, I guess one last question would be, do There is a theory that ancient aliens seeded this planet and kind of put this knowledge in here, and I guess we made it into religions. But do you think that that's plausible?
No, I think that's exactly what the Bible says. Read Genesis. If you understand Genesis and read it correctly, that's precisely what the Bible is saying in Genesis 1. Genesis 1 is saying that aliens came here from another world and seeded us. They created us. That's the whole story. We could go into another time if you want to pick up on that.
Absolutely.
Because that's what the Bible teaches.
Well, I do appreciate you coming on the show. It's been awesome having you here. I thank you for spending this time with us.
No, that's quite all right, and I appreciate you inviting me. And if you want to, let's do it again, and we could talk about Genesis 1 and the reading it correctly. That's a whole story in itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to do that. Thanks, Jordan, for coming out. Make sure you guys go to jordanmaxwellshow.com, join his research society, and I will have him back on Lighting the Void. Don't forget, tomorrow night, Kathleen Martin's going to be on with us. The show was produced by me, at Joe Roop, the Fringe FM, and cannot be rebroadcasted or syndicated without written permission. Music was by Chronox, Spaceboy, and Kevin MacLeod. Go to spaceboymusic.com to check out his music. Thanks, guys, for coming out. See you tomorrow night. Thanks, Jordan.
What a throwback. All right, well, guys, guess what? We'll see you guys tomorrow night for the regular live broadcast, but I wanted to make sure that we did a good throwback, start the week off. I miss Jordan. He lays it out like it is, and I miss what he's doing. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Hey, make sure you make it out here, damn it. Be a good live show. Night, y'all. Sweet dreams.